This is the Local Real Estate Developer Podcast, where we share the stories of locals across the country who took that empty lot or that old building and turned it into something awesome that their community needs. I'm Kristi Kandel, and I've been a real estate developer my entire career. My co-host Raphael is a commercial broker, and together we're sharing the stories of locals making a huge impact on their communities. And what we've learned is you don't need millions in the bank or decades of experience to get started. You just need the confidence, tools, and the right people around you. This podcast is your chance to gain the confidence to get in the game, because real estate development isn't just for the insiders anymore. It's for people like you too.
Welcome to the Local Real Estate Developer Podcast. I'm your co-host, Raphael. I'm a commercial broker, investor, and aspiring developer here in Louisville, Kentucky. And I'm here today with my co-host, Kristi Kandel, who's an all-star commercial real estate developer herself, and always great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you. And yep, Kristi Kandel, I am a real estate developer, investor, and I teach locals how to become developers in their community. And today I'm very excited about our guest because of what she does and what her organization does, because it's a gateway to getting people into development in their community and getting the public sector and the private sector working together and getting inspired. So Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you. A real pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. So I am Laura Kunkle. I am the executive director of American Bloom. We are nationally headquartered in Columbus, Ohio, so that is where I call home. American Bloom began about 25 years ago. In fact, next year is our 25th anniversary. And like all good stories, it started in a bar. It was a group of horticulture professionals at a trade show, and they were sort of lamenting the state of the industry and that they weren't able to get people at the grassroots level to understand the benefits of flowers, plants, and trees. We know that flowers are beautiful, but they are more than beautiful. There's human health benefits to flowers, plants, and trees. There's environmental benefits, and there's economic benefits. So this sort of brainstorming over cocktails and conversation led to them thinking about creating an organization that really connects people at the grassroots level about the benefits of plants. So this was a group of heavy hitters in the industry who decided we're going to start having monthly meetings, and they all flew in from around the country to Cleveland, Ohio. And I happened to, at the time, I was working for a national trade association that served the horticulture industry. So they said, hey, I was in the PR and marketing department. Why don't you just go to this meeting and learn what they're thinking? And so basically I've been involved since day zero, when it was just this idea. I wasn't sitting at the bar, but I was sitting in that first meeting in Cleveland. And so they decided, meaning these horticulture industry, really the bigwigs of the industry, they decided to model themselves after very successful programs that are in Canada and in Europe, and even now in Japan and China. So the In Bloom program is really expanding across the globe. So we created ourselves 25 years ago, and our focus is really about helping communities of all sizes and all resources be the very best that they can be. We focus on the use of flowers, plants, and trees, but we realized very quickly that vibrant and sustainable communities need more than just flowers, plants, and trees. So we knew it was really going to involve also a focus on environmental sustainability, heritage preservation, including adaptive reuse opportunities, and the most important part is community engagement. And so we really expanded beyond just encouraging the use of flowers, plants, and trees to really encourage more community involvement, community engagement, and private and public partnership. That's a very long story about 25 years of history there.
That's awesome. So to give additional perspective to those who are listening, my question is, so how do you typically orchestrate your value proposition for individual developers, or also, engaging with organizations that ultimately are, advancing the cause as far as development's concerned? Like, if you could identify maybe the way that you guys help each group would be helpful.
So let me talk a little bit about how our programs work. That might that might help me guide some of my comments then into directly answering your question. We offer currently 5 programs. They're very sexily named: level 1, level 2, level 3. And then we also have a conference, and we have a grant program. The grant program we do in collaboration with the Canadian National Railroad, and that is an opportunity where we put it's their dollars, but they allow us to administer the program on their behalf. And we can then put money directly into the communities through $25,000 grants for beautification projects. So that's one program. We have a conference like every other nonprofit out there. And then our levels, level 1, level 2, level 3, are different ways in which communities can participate. Our signature program is our level 3 program. And that is really where we are most successful and do the best work. And we've been in 370 communities so far around the country. It's in 44 states. We just picked up South Dakota. So it's really exciting to have South Dakota now in the American Bloom family. So the way the level 3 program works, and I'm just going to call it the American Bloom program because that's really what we're known for, is we send a two-person team of professional advisors. These are volunteers. They volunteer their time and talents, but they're professionals who go into a community and assess the community on how it's doing in about 150 different metrics that we've developed. How are you doing in the areas of floral impact, landscaped areas, community vitality, heritage preservation, environmental stewardship, urban forestry, and community involvement. Again, community involvement is a very important part for us. So a community is evaluated and scored, if you will, on these 150 metrics, and the advisors then write this report. And this report will rival what any high-powered consultant will pay, and we do it at a fraction of the cost. And this report really provides a short-term and a long-term roadmap. The advisors say, this is what we saw in your community, and these are where we think you can do better and how to do it. And so a community of any size, whether their American Bloom program is driven through volunteers or it's maybe perhaps driven from the Parks Department or Public Works, or the tourism department or a developer, they can take this document and say, okay, these are the things we can do in the short term, and these are things we can do maybe in the long term. And holy smokes, that's a scary one. We're going to parking lot that for now. So you've got this action plan that people can use. So instead of just feeling like, we just don't know what to do. We know our town needs to be better. We just don't know what to do. You have an outsider's perspective come in, and we're going to give you really tangible ideas that are attainable. Some communities have so many more resources than others. So our advisors understand that. So they're going to tailor the recommendations on things that can be accomplished. But we're also going to give you some lofty goals in there because you can do better. So we're going to help you go from good to great. So I think I try to get back to answering your question directly. I'm tying it perhaps to the developer side is, developers, you don't build just structures. You want to build lasting, thriving communities, the kind of places where families or businesses want to come. And so a community that is more beautiful, that's more vibrant, that's a place where you want to invest. That's a strategic investment opportunity for developers to really create value and also a legacy of your work. American Bloom programs that have been involved in a while that are more beautiful, are more vibrant, see increased property values. I mean, that's through enhanced curb appeal, better maintained public spaces. If your residents are more engaged, all of that correlates to higher property value and then stronger resale metrics. That's all important for what your industry does. I'm trying to think more about. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kristi.
With those programs and everything, and you're working with cities, but you also have developers who benefit. Do you find that it's primarily cities or the public sector outreach initially, but then maybe it's developers who could implement some things, or how do you normally get found?
That's a really good question. And boy, do I wish I knew that answer, because that would make our marketing a lot easier. For 25 years, we've been trying to figure that out. Who in the world is our customer? Because our customer is very broad. We have 7 criteria: floral impact, landscaped areas, urban forestry, and I keep going. There's 7. So everybody comes into the program differently. Somebody who's very much into floral and landscape, they're going to come into us, and that could be a local garden center. That could be a city manager, a public works person, or just Betty who loves her community and wants to make it better. Then you have people who are very much about a heritage preservation and adaptive reuse. So they're going to come into us from a different perspective. We'll serve everybody, and that's what we're about. But boy, I wish I could tell you how it happens. We find great success. The better success is really when the city works in collaboration with volunteers or the residents. Excuse me, I should say not everybody who lives there is a resident, so I should stop using that word resident, but you know what I mean by that. Other people who live there, the business community, and the municipal sector. When they all work together on their In Bloom program, things bloom. Pun intended, I suppose.
So to that point regarding the plan itself, so is it a pretty comprehensive overview, say, to the point where it's granular and says, hey, in this area you should incorporate design trees in this area, maybe there's certain flower arrangements that would work well in this particular zone? I guess does it get that granular, or is it more of a kind of a concept plan that would then be refined by the city and volunteers and everything else?
Yeah, I would say more concept with a little bit of granular. That's such a horrible answer, but
No, it makes
we're
sense.
not going to come in and say at the corner of Main Street and State Street, you should put 3 park benches, 4 trees of this variety, blah, blah, blah. What we will say is this is an opportunity for activation. Could be a public park, could be a little pocket park. It could just be a better block opportunity, referencing one of your former guests. We're not just going to say, hey, build a pocket park here. Then the report also gives you resources. Here's places, ideas from other communities, grant opportunities that maybe would help develop these types of public areas. So it's a little granular, but not, here, go do this.
And is there an opportunity? I think the answer is no, because your level 3 is getting that report. But if they say, okay, we like this, do you have an execution arm, or is that more so they've got their report and they'll find their local stakeholders who can be the execution part and guide them through?
That's a great question. I'm glad you mentioned that. The report that our advisors do will give ideas on who to try to bring to the table together. So you're not just sort of out on your own. Well, great, we got these ideas, but who does it? The advisors then will give recommendations on who are the best people to bring in as players in this project. And I would certainly hope, and I would have to go back and read 370 cities' evaluations over 25 years, but certainly the advisors have recommended including your local developers, because you really are key in creating these vibrant communities.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I think it's definitely helpful. And I can speak more so from advising developers in our markets. When you start to look to do larger developments, oftentimes there are city requirements, and rightfully so, that would look at the tree canopy and some of the impacts that the larger development could have on the population as a whole in the area. And oftentimes developers aren't necessarily don't have the expertise in that area. And so I think that they want to be able to comply with city regulations, and they do want to develop something that's going to be engaged by community members that they're going to be proud to be able to have in their community. But oftentimes it's partly that they just don't know where to even begin. So I think that having a resource where they can be able to tap into, like yourselves, and ultimately the people that you all recommend, to be able to deliver hopefully a product that everyone can enjoy. I mean, that's very helpful because, again, there's so many pieces of a development, and one of those pieces is what you guys are describing. So
yeah, that's reminding me, in a lot of our projects we would have, what's the community or public benefit that we're adding? And in some cases it could have been a mural. Some cases we built a gazebo and had some great landscaping around. Some it was different benches to create seating. But yeah, the landscape honestly was a good go-to in a lot of areas, because it helped just create the walkability. It created just the friendliness versus you're just walking from a cold concrete and asphalt parking lot through a sidewalk to a building, and it just, it didn't feel right. Do you find, out of all of those, what's the typical size city that would engage you? Are you working in the primary markets, or are you finding it's more the tertiary markets, or is there?
We find we've had communities of all sizes. We've had Chicago, we've had a couple business districts from New York City involved. So we're in the big cities, but candidly, our best work is done in communities probably under 40,000, even 20,000. Because I think in those situations, you have more community engagement and more volunteer spirit. It's just harder in the big cities. There's just so much going on in those big cities. So in smaller communities, I think you have the opportunity for better collaboration for the people who live there and work there. Now, that being said, if a big city wants to be involved in American Bloom, we're going to send our very best advisors to you and give you a remarkable report. Chicago's a beautiful city, but we went in there and said, I think you can do better, and here's how to do it. So I'd like to think we've been a little part of their transformation over the last couple decades. But yeah, we're definitely smaller focus, I think, is where we do our best work.
I mean, there's I want to say over 16,000 cities in the US who have a population of under 10,000 people. That's over 75% of our communities. So yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Well, and think of all the communities even surrounding larger metro areas that have that meet that criteria.
Suburbs and
Suburbs. I mean, literally suburbs of our local market. I'm located here in Louisville, Kentucky. I could name off probably 15 to 20 communities within a 30-minute drive of Louisville that meet that criteria.
Yep, absolutely. Yes, we've had several Kentucky communities involved. In fact, it's wonderful. Lexington is probably the largest community in Kentucky that's been involved, but we've been in small communities like Beattyville, Kentucky, and there's probably 15 more Kentucky communities I could rattle off if I went through that Rolodex in my brain.
Yeah, we'll have to keep in touch potentially and try to see if there's a way we can incorporate. Because I mean, I know that Louisville in particular in our market, we've been trying to push for more various different projects. I think the biggest projects we've been pushing for is streetscapes reorientation to allow for more walkability. We had probably in a lot of major metros where you have a lot of one-way roads that don't really promote walkability or people wanting to be in an area for a long extended period of time. And so we're trying to expand sidewalks and create more two-way traffic, especially closer to downtown, to create more walkability and more a vibrant community downtown. So
yep.
I'm sure part of that could be the streetscape, or not the streetscape. I'm sorry, the Bloom projects.
But streetscapes are important. The street trees and we were. You think about our own behaviors when we're driving through a town and that main street's beautiful. You're likely going to stop. You're going to spend money. You might invest. You buy a home. Those flowers might be that wow, that first impression, but it also matters, are the streets clean and tidy? Are the sidewalks in good shape? And, are the fences good? What's their banner program like? Do they even have a banner program? If they don't have a banner program, that's one thing we'd recommend. There's always sign regulations in communities, but banner programs are wonderful and easy things for communities to implement. Really sort of can brand them and provide some, just some.
Well, and I think to your point, I mean, especially in some of these larger metro areas where we've had some disruption since COVID, I think a lot of communities are trying to drive more walkability and livability downtown. Like I know our local market was greatly affected during COVID, and granted, from an office standpoint, so our daytime traffic downtown has definitely been affected. And I think there's been a big push in recent years to try to have more downtown residents. And obviously, in order to do that, you have to have a reason for them to want to live downtown. And it combines not only the economic benefit, which would be living there and being close to work, but also having a place where they want to come to and want to walk around and want to engage with local businesses. And so, it kind of goes to show how interconnected all these different pieces are. It's not just one that drives the other.
So much so. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say, I think you brought up a great point referencing COVID. COVID changed everything and how we view our downtowns. If suddenly we needed people in restaurants, so that meant outdoor dining. And that meant restaurants had to change the way they did it. It also meant cities had to change some of their codes and regulations. And now that's a given. These are now things that we come to expect when we look for places to live. Being pet friendly, dog friendly, for example, like cities have had to change, but we know what we want and what we think is a vibrant community. So cities have had to adjust to that. But COVID, I think, had to change our mindset. COVID was also a time when instead of being stuck in our homes, we would go out in nature and take a walk in a park or walk through the forest. And it was an opportunity to connect with nature in ways that maybe many of us had never done before. COVID forced us to do that. And that goes back to, again, we're about the benefits of flowers, plants, and trees. And we sure saw during COVID the human health benefits of being outdoors and being in nature and green spaces. So, sorry to interrupt you, Kristi.
No, yeah, that's amazing. And it's so right on. I was just going to say, I grew up in a small town in Ohio, and I used to go, I don't like living in this small town. Everybody knows my business before I know my business. And what's interesting is I've lived in big cities in Florida and California, and what I've gravitated to when I've bought, and the two places I call home now are Southwest Florida and Lake Tahoe, two very, very tiny communities that 9,000 people population in Tahoe and what, like 3 or 6,000 people here in Florida. And I'm like, oh, why did I gravitate to these? Because it had that community feel. It has the walkability. It has the outdoors, the nature, all of that comes together. And if I think about the pockets of big cities, like thinking about COVID, in Long Beach, California, there was a street that they put all the vendors outside in all the restaurants and allowed them to have restaurants. And when they put up the lights and they shut down the street and they had the landscape and they made it pet friendly, and then we started to get to know the neighbors that we walk past all the time and never talk to. I was like, that's the part. Relationships, connection, collaboration, community, all of that.
Yeah,
that's what I love about your guys' mission and what you're doing.
That's really what we're trying to create. Yeah. And you said it so well. So I'd like to put you on payroll today. Okay.
Hey, can we chat for a second? Since you're listening to this podcast, you're already thinking like a developer. You see the potential in your community and you're ready to do more than just watch from the sidelines. That's exactly why we created the Local Developer Vault. It's a free resource full of tools, templates, and trainings to help you take action. And here's the best part. When you sign up, you'll also get access to our local real estate developer community. It's full of people just like you who are making real things happen in their neighborhoods. So don't just listen to the stories. Become the next one that we spotlight on our show. The link in the show notes to unlock the vault and join our movement. Hey, I love the mission and brand. I tell everyone about it. I'm like, you need to talk to Laura, then go talk to Krista at Better Blog. Like, let's go, people.
Yeah, in fact, we're going to have Krista on later this month as a webinar to share with our audience about the work that they're doing. So thank you for making that connection.
Awesome.
Yeah. So do you guys, out of curiosity, do you guys typically connect with other organizations to create kind of like comprehensive overviews for different cities, or is it mainly groups that are approaching you directly and engaging with you directly?
Could you say it again? I'm not sure I understood the question.
Well, I was just asking, we had mentioned Better Block as an example. I know that was a recent connection, but I'm saying, are there other organizations that you guys typically work in, not necessarily in tandem, but you guys typically run across each other in a lot of these different projects, and how you're able to kind of move forward and advance the cause?
Our advisors really try to keep abreast of organizations and what they're doing, so that when they're writing their report and they're giving a recommendation, they're going to give examples and connection to other organizations who are doing in that space and operating in that space. Better Block was one I had actually never heard of until Kristi. And now it's like, that's a no-brainer that our advisors should be sharing that with other communities. And so now that's my job then, is to educate our advisors who don't know about Better Block about what they're doing and what other organizations are doing. There's thousands of nonprofits out there doing incredible work in communities. And so if we can just share the great work that's happening in the nonprofit world with our communities, there's people, doing remarkable things. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, and let's make that connection.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think there's, if more people had that outlook, I think it would be.
Well, I mean, you know in your work how collaboration is key. And that's what we believe. Great things happen when we're working together. And when we help define, priorities and solutions, and we all take part in these projects. Maybe I'm speaking for you, but I sort of envision that's sort of, I think, how maybe you are most successful in your efforts, is when you're just, working together on priorities and solutions.
It's who, not how, as they say. It's like the book, the Who, Not How. Yeah, I came to that realization relatively early on in my career, which helped immensely, is that you operate in your zone of genius, and then you try to fill in the gaps around you. Because at the end of the day, that's how you're going to be able to deliver whatever the mission is. You could do everything yourself, but it's not going to be nearly as effective or successful as if you involve other people who have a zone of genius that's outside the purview of what you ultimately have a zone of genius of. So obviously, to your point, you guys operate in a space that is very much needed, and you guys have done hundreds and hundreds of these plans, and it's ultimately going to be a benefit for cities to, instead of trying to handle it themselves, incorporate someone like yourselves who can create a comprehensive understanding of how they can proceed, and then from there make recommendations to other who can help make the plan, implement the plan, I should say.
Exactly. And I'm stealing that phrase, zone of genius. I've never heard it, so
You've never heard of it? Yeah.
No, never heard of it, but I was writing that down quickly. Yeah, zone of genius. Love it. Yeah. That's wonderful.
Well, and you mentioned partners. And so we talked about other organizations who are doing it, but you have your own advisors. How do people, if they're like, wow, like I would love to volunteer and do this, how do they get into the program? Where do they need to geographically live or be, or how does that look?
These are great questions. So our advisors come from all parts of the country. They're from the South, they're from the West Coast, a lot of us from the Midwest because so much population is in the Midwest. They have varied backgrounds. Some are city managers, some are former mayors, our current mayors, in fact. Some are in public works, some are in parks. We have landscape architects, we have heritage architects, we have archaeologists, in fact. They really delve more into the heritage side of things. So, and also certainly we have the flower and the plant people who know a lot about them, and this, what works in a zone in Florida would not work in a zone in Minnesota, for example. And so again, these recommendations that our advisors provide are tailored to the community based on their location, their growing season, resources, et cetera, et cetera. So anyone who wants to, thinks, I think I kind of like this idea and I might want to be an advisor, I'd like to learn more, please reach out to us. Our website is americainbloom.org. Our email address is aib@americainbloom.org. I'd love to talk to you about what it means to be an advisor. And certainly if there's anybody out there listening that wants to know more about how to get their community involved, I would love to talk to you. I do about a 45-minute Zoom presentation that talks you through the program, what it means. I give you real life examples from communities around the country and what they're doing before and after photos and sort of the economic impact that has happened as a result of their participation in America in Bloom. I mean, I've got 370 cities around the country. Don't ask me to pick my favorite, but I've got some really great stories from around the country of what can happen when people come together through the America in Bloom program and bring people and ideas together.
Yeah, I was going to say, could you maybe tell us some success stories of just like, hey, we came into the city and here's what happened, if there's any that come to mind?
Two come to mind quickly. I'll talk first about Castle Rock, Washington. It is a very small community, fewer than 2,000 people. They sit at the base of Mount St. Helen. They were a dying logging town, and they came to America in Bloom 16-ish years ago, and they knew that they needed to do something to save their town. Their vacancy rate downtown was approaching 50%. And it was going to get worse. And so they considered the America in Bloom program their marketing program. And so they got involved. And that first year, the person who got them started was a plant lover. Again, the entry into us is very different. Could be someone who's into heritage, who's into trees, who's into flowers. This person happened to be really into flowers. And so she got they planted some hanging baskets, just a handful, and they did put some baskets outside of the businesses. It was a volunteer group that put them together. And then they urged the businesses, please water the flowers. And they had to stay on those business owners that first year and sort of train them on what proper watering is. But those are easy. You just had to stay on them. And so they just started with flowers. And then they started focusing more on their environmental sustainability. And 16 years later, now they're focusing more on their heritage preservation. They have remarkable heritage. You sit at the base of Mount St. Helen. They're a logging industry. They have remarkable history. That being said, every community has history and it should be celebrated and recognized and protected. Anyway, to go back to Castle Rock, 16 years later, remember they were at nearly 50% vacancy rate. Now they're busting at the seams. People want to invest and live in Castle Rock. They have van loads of tourists come through just to see the flowers. In fact, this is Castle Rock behind me. I did not purposely pick that picture, but that I believe is Castle Rock. Yes, the banner says Castle Rock. You go through there now and you went from a dying logging town to a town that everybody wants to live in and visit. And there is no vacancy rate in Castle Rock, Washington. It is remarkable. And it started with, a simple flower and now has bloomed into this community-wide initiative. They have young people from the high school now who are involved in their program. They have now at the high school, they have a whole greenhouse program now. So kids now have started, they started, planting the baskets, and now they have a real skill and a trade that they can now go out into the world and make a career of. It is absolutely remarkable. So that's Castle Rock. And then Logan, Ohio. Kristi, you're an Ohio kid like me.
The home of Katie Smith, U.S. Olympian basketball player. Did get to meet her and hold a gold medal. I'm just throwing that out there. But yes, Logan, Ohio is amazing.
I'm a huge Katie Smith fan, yeah. So they're in Appalachia. It's a depressed part of this part of the country. So resources are tighter there. But the people who live there love their town. And so they started, they got a grant. It really helped getting a grant for some sidewalk repair. But they started planting flowers, and now it has been transformed transformed. They have all kinds of buildings now that have been purchased and gone through some rehabilitation. So now you have a new theater that used to be a crumbled down building, and you have cool hotels, and now you have an old car dealership that they changed into a brewery, a winery, and a distillery. Old buildings that were dying have now come to life, and now you have a vibrant downtown where people are walking around. People are now investing in downtown and living. Plants are pretty, but they are more than pretty. Those are just two examples. I could give you 368 more.
No, for sure, and we
Yeah.
appreciate that. So one of the things I'm curious about is what's the future hold for the organization? What does the next 5 years look for? What initiatives are you all trying to roll out, and how can the broader populace be able to help out in that regard?
That's great. We really want to grow our numbers. We typically send advisors to about 50 communities every year. That's all the capacity we have.
Mhm.
I'm the only staff member, so there's that capacity, but also just having enough professional advisors. We want them to be the best of the best. But we want to grow our capacity so to get out into more than 50 every year. Even though they might not have advisors visit every year, the communities are still doing the work. They're taking a year off from being with us. So we want to grow capacity over the next 5 years. We also are taking a very, I would say, a critical look at our programs and making sure that they all really provide the value that cities need now. We began 25 years ago. Things are different. So we need to be flexible and change the way we're doing things. So we're really taking a critical look. And sometimes that's hard to take a hard look at yourself. And so sometimes looking in the mirror ain't so easy. So we're looking at that and being very strategic, I think, on some big changes that will be made. We're also getting ready to roll out, we're in a pilot program now they'll soon launch nationally, called Gardens Across America. And this is a very simple self-assessment program where homeowners, business owners, or public gardens, they can certify their gardens. And they self-check off on, do they believe in these types of ideals? And then so you can self-check off. And that's just another way to show your commitment to beautification and environmental sustainability. And then we're also always looking for cool new opportunities for collaboration. We know, using his phrase of zone of genius, we want to expand. We'll focus on what we know, but then really connect with the other people who know things. So those are some of our 3 or 4 biggest priorities of the next few years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to trying to maintain contact over time. And now that this is one of the cool things about this podcast medium is we get to meet people doing awesome things around the country. And, obviously this program is something that could be used in all communities all across the country. And we're looking forward to trying to see if there's ways we can help support your all's mission. And hopefully people who are listening to this podcast, if they live in a community where they think that they could benefit for something like this, again, we'll make sure to include all your contact information in the show notes so they can reach out directly and try to see if they can add.
My brain is already going. It's like, wait, do we connect? Like, how do we maybe get the chambers to go? How do we get maybe Habitat for Humanity? How do we get the Rotary Club? Like, how do we get the ones that are already at scale to go, hey, you need to know about these guys?
Yeah, and I think you brought up a really good point. If we'd love to make these sort of national connections and how to then filter down into their membership at the local level, but we do find that Rotary is actually leading the charge in several communities. Again, it's just, who is that customer for us? And so sometimes you don't know.
Who's the leaders in the community that ultimately can champion something like this? Because I feel like you need that catalyst. You need someone or some organization to kind of take the mantle and say, hey, we're taking this on and we're going to make sure that it has staying power over a period of time. Because this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. This is a multi-year, multi-decade commitment to improving the community.
You have to have a cheerleader. We do know that. The thing is, it could be, again, I mentioned Betty, who lives in ABC town, who just wants her town to be better. And so she champions this. She brings the right people together. I do think you are more successful, though, when you have a group of people who live there, business community, and also the municipal sector. If you can get your city manager or mayor or public works or parks department person engaged, that we just see great success. But the reality is the business community is also as equally important as any of the other players. Again, we all work together. That's how we become successful.
Definitely. Well, Laura, we obviously greatly appreciate your willingness to come on and share your story and your vision for the organization. We're really looking forward to seeing what the response is from this episode. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that could benefit in communities all across the country. And one of our missions, as Kristi has said, is that we want to make sure we empower people in their communities to, in our case, take on development projects. But part of that piece is also incorporating things that we've discussed even in this podcast to be able to help beautify and attract more people to your community and have something in your community that ultimately you're proud of. So we obviously greatly appreciate your willingness to come on the show and share your insights.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we'll make sure to include that in the show notes as well. So if you guys are watching this on YouTube, please, first off, go to the show notes and we'll make sure to include her contact information so you can reach out directly. And we obviously greatly appreciate everyone for engaging. But again, thanks so much, Laura, for your time. We obviously greatly appreciate it. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. It makes a huge impact in our ability to reach a broader audience. Along with that, if you guys are watching this in a podcast format, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcast, please leave a 5-star review. Again, it makes a huge impact on our ability to reach a broader audience, and we want to be able to empower people all across the country to be able to take on local real estate development projects in their communities. So thanks again so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time.